Alrighty. Saints TV. How are we, everyone? I'll give everyone a couple of minutes just to join in. Obviously, talking trades. Free agency opens up tomorrow, and then obviously the trade period begins on Monday as well. So we'll go through a few of the players that supposedly are coming in, and obviously a few players that will have to make way next week as well. So we'll give a couple more seconds. But we'll obviously kick off with the players that will come into the club first, and then players that go out. And also, if you're watching, give me your thoughts on who you think we should get that hasn't been named, and also what you sort of give up in for certain players as well. So obviously, Brad Hill, Ryder, Jones. What's your trade value for them as well? But I'll start off with a good question by Brad, actually. Who do you think we'll get for Bruce? I don't think we'll get anyone. I was looking at Twitter just before, actually, and hearing that Sydney may offer 5 and 9 for Joe Daniher, which, if that's the case, well then I think St Kilda should really be tough and sort of demand the first round pick to the Bulldogs for Josh Bruce. If you look at stats by stats over their careers, sort of pretty much even. Daniher's obviously got the last name that helps him elevate a little bit more, but I think Bruce's stats overall compared to each other, I think a first round pick's more than enough. Will we get it? I don't think so. But I'd dare say at least a second round pick for Bruce. Let's go through who's coming in. Brad Hill's obviously the biggest one. I think that's a really good get, more than what we need. He adds a lot of pace to that wing. Should have been All-Australian. I know he wasn't this year, but I had him in my team. Very good user of the ball. Premiership player with Hawthorn, of course. Went over to Freo for the last couple of years. Wants to come back. So I think it's a really good move. What do we give up for him? Pick 6 at the moment. I dare say that's probably going to be the likely option. Is it too much? I think it is. But in saying that, when you're a lesser club, unfortunately, to get these bigger and better players, you have to pay a little bit over for them. Is there a way we can work around it and try and get another first round pick in and sort of do a 1-for-2 deal and give them, the latter pick? Possibly. GWS at the start of the final series had a really good option of 12 and 14. Them going to the grand final doesn't help us. But I think it's not a great draft this year. There's obviously the 2 Grammar boys at the top of the table that will most likely go to Gold Coast. That's not all but sewn up, but they're the top, and then it's a really big drop-off for 3, 4, and so on. So pick 6 last year, I would have been a little bit more hesitant in giving it for Hill. He's still only, 25, 26 years of age. He averaged 25 touches last year. Showed a little bit of two-way as well last year, running back as well. And I think he really complements Jack Billings on the other wing. And it really gives us that option going forward to deliver the ball into the forward 50 a lot better than what we have. Obviously, this year and last year as well, we were a bit disappointing in that aspect. Our game style and game plan wasn't actually that bad. It was just our delivery inside forward 50 and hitting our targets that really cost us in multiple games. So just looking through some of the statements at the moment. Good job, good call. Sorry, Jason. Bruce plays for St Kilda, so 3rd rounder. Yeah. Top 20 pick in the draft. I wouldn't be too concerned about having the top 20 pick. I think the club's gone through a certain angle. And a lot of teams do it when they're in that rebuilding stage. Are we going to go through the draft? Are we going to go through free agency and trade and really get top-up players? You can see what Hawthorn's done. I think at the moment in their best 22, I think 10 or 11 of them are from other clubs. And it worked when they had their main core still there. Now that they don't, it's sort of becoming a little bit underdone, and you can see the weaknesses coming out. I like the way we've done it. I think we've done, gone through the draft a couple of years. We found some really good players: Rowan Marshall, Billings, Clark, Caulfield. Those sort of players. Picked up a few mature age recruits as well in Parker and Hine last year, which I thought was also a really good step in the right direction. Now I think we need to start transitioning into free agency and trade, and really target some big name players. The question mark's always been about A-grade talent. Now, yeah, we do lack it, but there's a lot of players in that list that are under 24, and you can see the potential to be A-grade is definitely there. They're probably at that B-grade at the moment, in probably Billings and Marshall. And then Hunter Clark in the last probably 8 weeks of the season was probably that C+ B grade as well. Now it's time for them to make the next step up and really get into that A grade era or section, of the competition. Go through some of the comments again. Nunes and Akers. Akers is an interesting one. I think he's got really good potential. He lacks a bit of confidence, I think. Really struggles to fit in the game plan sometimes, especially under Richo. I thought he played a little bit better under Brett Ratten. But then in saying that, he is really good trade rate, and he might help get the Hill deal over the line and maybe allow us to keep that pick 6 as well. So Akers is an interesting one for me. I understand if he gets traded, but for me, I'd like him to stay. I think depending on how well the trade sort of period goes for us, I think St Kilda would more than likely try and keep him. But again, at the same time, he's there if they need a fallback option. Nunes, I think, is gone. From the talk I'm hearing, he's off to Sydney or Fremantle as a free agent as well. So we'll get hopefully a second round compensation there. It might sound a lot, but Richmond's getting a first round compensation for Brandon Ellis. So second round compensation, depending on how long the contract and what sort of contract Nunes will get. But I'm 90% sure that he's out of the club. It'd be good for him. I think he needs a fresh start. He got too complacent under Richardson, and he just sort of assumed he was going to get picked every week. So, and obviously good for us. It opens a spot up for Brad Hill to slot straight in. Please not Maston. There's a reason he's not staying at West Coast. Yeah, the reason he's not staying at West Coast is because he's probably a little bit too old, and they need to free up room for a Tim Kelly. I'm not against the idea. I think you can actually add a bit to the group. Whether he can play consistently enough to be in our best 22 weekly, not too sure. But he obviously does add that premiership experience, and he's a valuable player. He didn't have a great year this year. I think he averaged probably 3rd or 4th lowest year totals in disposals and all that sort of stuff. But he was in and out of the side and really was in a logjam of midfielders with Shuey and Gaff and those sort of blokes at the Eagles. So I think a fresh start for him. And I think it could be a good option. And it's a free agent move. So the club will have to weigh up whether or not they go through that path or they wait till the delisted free agent, delisted period kicks in, because that would impact the compensation for Jack Nunes as well. I worry about what we have to give up for Jones. I wouldn't be surprised if Sydney do a straight swap with Jones with Daniel McKenzie. His name's been floated around a little bit, sort of, same position sort of players. And he'd probably fit in well in their blood culture sort of stuff, likes to put his body on the line. Jones, I think he's sort of a hit and miss player. When he's on, he's a really good, solid contributor. When he's off, he's a very bad butcher of the ball. So we hope that, he can come in and really give us that energy out of that half-back line, him and Savage and Webster as well, and use the ball going forward really well. As I said this year when I was doing my end of or post-game reviews, our play in general wasn't that bad. Yeah, there was moments where, you could have fixed this up, could have fixed that up. But it was just our last kick that would matter, that we completely just butchered every time. And then the opposition would rebound and hit the scoreboard straight away. You fix that little bit up. You're not going to hit it 100% of the time, but you fix that up to kick, 80% efficiency going forward. Then, you hit the scoreboard a lot more. You get better shots on goal. You're not on the boundary in tight corners, right in front of the two sticks. And it's a lot easier for the forwards to kick goals, and therefore you score more goals, and you put your scoreboard pressure on. Just having a look through the comments. Sorry, guys. Ben King, interesting. I was actually speaking to Jake about this the other day. If St Kilda really wants Ben King, now's the time to do it. Don't wait till next year. His value in trade is not going to change. Next year's draft's a lot better than this year's. So I would consider, giving up a second or a third round pick, depending on what we can get for Jack Steven and Josh Bruce. Then send it to Gold Coast, get him down here, get him in that forward line, get Max King up and about next year. And it could be a really dangerous forward line. A lot of people are a bit sort of torn with Josh Bruce. I understand it. He's a good player. He's a really strong contested mark. But for the amount of money he's on and for the development of Max King as well to come in, I'd like to see round one team sheet, Max King full forward. Tim Membry is obviously a starter, hands down. Does Josh Bruce fit in that with them? I don't think so. Now, you don't want to be paying that much money for a guy who's going to be playing in the twos for however many weeks in the year. And with the sort of intel that they're chasing Max's brother as well, I think there's really good value for Bruce on the market. Let's get rid of him now. Now, it's a hard call, but these calls do happen in the AFL. And I think it's the right one for both Bruce and St Kilda. Saints after anyone but Hill, Ryder and Jones. I'm not too sure. I haven't heard much talk about the Saints other than that. There's still a few players that are being floated around in terms of possibilities. Daniel Talia was a name that I saw today. Whether or not that rumour is true, I don't think so. But with the exodus that is happening at Adelaide at the moment, I don't think that's possible. But again, you don't know if you don't try. Brad Crouch is another one, although he's sort of tilting towards the Gold Coast Suns at the moment. Saints were obviously the first ones to enter that conversation. Again, you don't know if you don't try, but it's all about trying to fix what we need and not just getting the best, the players that are available. Brad Hill was something that we need. Paddy Ryder, I still think, is something that we need, as long as he's going to take that backseat option and really help Marshall develop. Marshall's the number one ruckman, but Ryder is obviously a really good target inside forward 50, although he didn't like it at Port Adelaide. I think given that Rutten will probably set that out to him and say, look, this is the setup that we're going to do, probably 60-40 Marshall's way, but we want you to be a really strong target in our forward 50. I think he'd be happy with that. Jones, half-back line. If he can kick it properly, then we'll be all right. But again, that's a bit of an iffy one for me. Webster fell out at the end of the year this year, sorry. Don't know if he'll still having that thumb injury. So if he comes back next year, well, then it's a really good competition for that half-back spot. And I'd like to see Savage in the middle a little bit more as well. I think he adds a little bit more explosiveness through the congested areas, and he can use the ball really well. So maybe Jones does help move Savage into the middle a bit more. I'm just reading the comments. Top 10 pick for King. Yeah, I was speaking in terms of the St Kilda point of view, but Gold Coast would definitely demand a top 10 pick for him. There's no question about it. And it comes down to you know, how well do they value the draft and how well do they value the development of Ben King and whether or not that matches up. I wouldn't give pick 6, but if you gave him a 11 or 12, then maybe that does match up and it works out to be quite even. Hearing Loney's name a little bit, I thought he was actually playing really well before he had that hyperextension. I think it was against the Eagles this year. Again, yeah, he can be a liability, but when he's on. He just needs to really knuckle down and work on his conversion rate. So I dare say that Loney will remain at the Saints. He was, I think he was floated around last year with Collingwood before I think he re-signed at the end of last year as well. So I don't see the Saints moving him on anytime soon. Sam Gray, interesting one. To me, him and Ryder, I dare say, would be a late pick. Both sort of got told in their exit meetings that, go find a new club. So I don't think Port will be too concerned about getting a second, third round pick. It'd be later in the draft for that one. Just heard Dylan Robertson to play next year. From sources so far, they say yes. Obviously, it comes down to his heart again. But from what I've heard, that he's worked on it, he's had the research done, and they've got a really good control of the system and then the ticket that he's got in there. So, so far, so good. Obviously, preseason will tell, and obviously the start of next year. Jones adds strength in this we don't have around the ball. As center, other than Marshall got smashed. A lot of outsiders, not enough hard ball gets. Good call, Paul. I thought Dunstan really worked his way into that conversation. But in terms of, Ross, Billings, without Stephen for most of the year, we did get smashed in the contest in and under. So Jones would be able to add to that, that side of the football. Just reading through the comments, loving the interaction from you guys. D-Mac for Jones, I definitely agree with that. Could even do an exchange of draft picks with that one to sort of sugarcoat it. Paddy McCartan, haven't heard too much about him. I think they're still waiting on reviews of his concussion. I'm not sure if he's still having the symptoms or not. I haven't sort of heard too much about it. But obviously his health is main priority. If he can get back on the field, then I think it'll add a bit of boost to the boys' sort of mentality and commitment and really get behind him. But obviously, his health is main priority, obviously with his diabetes as well. So the club will be taking real precautionary action with him, and I don't blame them for doing that. I'd like to see Jones. Oh, interesting call there, Damien. Jones can do it, but I think if you're going to if you're up against a Patrick Cripps or a Nat Fyfe or a Dangerfield, Jack Steele goes to him straight away. I like the idea, but I don't think that happens, unfortunately. Ryder plays full forward, King plays centre. Membry was interesting because when Riewoldt was still playing, he was sort of filling that role of going up the ground a little bit more. It wasn't this year, sorry. It was last year where he sort of stayed back in the forward line a little bit. And I think he's more versatile and more dangerous when he actually goes up the ground a little bit more and then burns his opponent on the back. Then that would allow Max King to stay forward. Honestly, give Max King the 50 to himself. 202 centimetres. He's really athletic. I saw Armitage's comments today on SEN. He grabs the ball as a midfielder, and I've heard Dermy talk about him as well. So if they can really work those two together, I think you add, Loney, Gresham will obviously play a little bit more midfield time again next year. Sam Gray, if he comes in, Dean Kent, I think we're all forgetting the pace that he added before he got injured. Matty Parker, Robbie Young, those sort of players. I think that's a really good mix of tall and athletic big men in Membry and King, both good contested marks. Membry I still rate as one of the best one-on-one marks in the competition. And then you add those crumbing forwards of Loney, Parker, and that. It can work really, really well. Sam Gray's name, has been. From what I'm hearing about Constable and the pick with Stephen is I'd take the player. Geelong and Essendon are really two teams that are really difficult to work with during the trade period. Don't want to give up much, but obviously want to get everything when their players going. So in terms of what I'm hearing a third-round pick for Stephen. I don't like it because I think he's a lot better than a third-round pick. But obviously there is that worry of we're trading because we want him to be happy. So maybe the player is the better option there. Constable's a really good player. He's tall. He's a good inside player and can get the ball on the outside as well. And from what I saw of him this year, can really use it well. So I think that's a really big decision that they've got to weigh up. What's better, third-round pick or a young player? And I know he's sort of looking at his options to try and get a little bit more game time. And he obviously get a lot more game time with us than what he would at Geelong. What's your thoughts on Sam Gray? It sort of does feel like we're trading just for the sake of it. But at his best, he's actually a good asset in the forward half of the ground. Can pinch hit in the middle. Adds a bit more pace, a bit more flair. He can kick it both sides of the feet, which is really rare in this day and age of football. But if it's a deal like I think it's going to be for a late pick, then I don't understand why not. I think he will give a little bit more competition for our small forwards. I think, if the likes of Ben Long, Parker, Young, they've got the pace and ability and explosiveness to be able to, go into the middle of the ground, but they sort of just get a little bit too comfortable. So adding Sam Gray as well might actually help that. And then in saying that, Sam Gray might be sort of like a replacement for Nunes as well. Obviously, Brad Hill will slot straight into that wing spot, but you need a little bit of depth to be a really good side. Injuries can happen, we know that. So depth is key as well. Hearing Vital could be an absolute jet. I'm hearing the same thing. Was a projected top 8 pick before he got injured with his back. So get him on the park and hopefully he's ready before or just after preseason kicks off in November. So fingers crossed he can get onto the field and be a real good contributor for us. Just having a look at the comments. Are the Saints any chance to pull a rabbit out of the hat, say a Crouch brother or Papley, whilst he nominated Carlton? He's open to any Victorian. Papley, I don't understand the fascination with him. He's a really good player, don't get me wrong. Really good forward, smart, has a really good IQ around the forward 50. But I heard North was offering $900,000 a year. That's a lot of money for a small forward that's still young. And I don't think he's worth that sort of money. So I'm just going to charge my laptop. Crouch brother, I'd go for Brad. I think he had a really, really good year this year. And I'd definitely be continuing those conversations that they've had already with his management. Whether or not they can get a deal done, I don't want them to trade next year's first-round pick, because I think that's stupid. But if they can work out a way to get him into the club, then that actually goes a long way. I thought maybe at the start, halfway through the year, when the talks started happening, that Dunstan would have been a name being crossed over. But obviously he re-signed for a further 2 years. So don't think that's going to happen. But I think if there's going to be a rabbit out of the hat, Brad Crouch is the way. Matt Crouch, I don't think. I said he's more of a Seb Ross type player, and I think a lot of supporters have had enough with Seb Ross as it is. So you don't want another one of them. Hearing a lot of Constable, a lot of people want him. It's interesting. Papley is very overrated. Yes. Any chance Ben King this year? Yeah, I already have adjusted it, but I personally think they should, but I don't think I think they'll wait till next year. His value is not going to change, even though he's out of contract next year. He's still, the way the trade system works, he's still traded, not a free agent. So they're still going to demand the same amount of value. I feel like half of the team are the best of good players, but we don't see it every week. Wouldn't bother bringing Gray and Jones to the Arca system if it doesn't make sense. Yeah, it's a good call to make. I think if you're going to bring in, Jones is probably the better one to bring in. Adds a little bit of toughness, inside bull, and it's not afraid to get his hands dirty. Whereas Gray is probably more on the outside and likes to kick the goals and be the sugar on top. But I don't know. I still feel like they can add a bit of value to the team. Brad Crouch and his ongoing groin injury, that's the worry. This year, he was definitely a really solid player. I think he finished top 10-ish in the Brownlow, but he has had ongoing problems with injury. Now that's why Adelaide hasn't wanted to extend him for so many years, because of that there. And he obviously wants security, which is selfish, but at the same time the right thing to do. I'd probably go a 4-year deal, 3 or 4 year deal, and that way there's still a little bit of benefit on your side, but it still gives him time to really show that he's worth the money. In terms of value, price-wise, I wouldn't go the $1 million. I think the $1 million should be really coveted for the best players. Maybe around the 800, 850 mark for Brad Crouch, but definitely not $1 million. No. What is the right pick for Josh Bruce? Late first, early second, 100%. I said before, talking about Joe Danaher and his value, everyone's saying 5 and 9, with Carlton giving up pick 9 for Papley. Therefore, Sydney get 5 and 9, and then they trade that on to Essendon. I think that's way too much. So if they're going off that basis, well, then St Kilda should absolutely demand a first-round pick. I'm just reading through the comments, sorry. Trade Akers to Freo and keep pick 6 for Hill. I don't think Akers will be a straight swap if that does happen. Maybe Akers in a second or a third, depending on how easy Freo are to deal with. But interesting call. The comment under, hopefully we split pick 6 into 14 and 22. Trade Akers and 14. I think that's a bit too much for Hill. Maybe Akers and 22 and keep 14 would be a better option there from Darren. Just having a look at this one. Just having a look at the comments. Sorry. Just to talk on Ben King. He is a son, and I don't think he will be traded this year. Obviously out of contract next year, but my opinion is that Saints should go after him this year. His trade value again is not going to change. So, but that's about it in terms of where we're at. Stephen, I haven't really touched much on Stuve, but he is going to Geelong. There's no way that deal won't get done. I think it'll be one of the first ones to get done as well. So I expect him to go, I don't want to say cheaply, but it'll be cheaply. Probably that third-round pick that's been floated around. Hypothetically, how do we get the Ben King deal done this year? We'll just reading Darren's comment, hopefully we can split pick 6 into 14 and 22. Trade Akers and 22 for Hill. Pick 14, pick Ben King. What do you think about that? It takes us out of the first round this year, but I'd like to see people's thoughts on pick 14 for King. Whether or not that's enough, I don't know. Gold Coast might play hardball, which I don't blame them for doing. Do we think our team needs more draft talent, experience, proven talent? I think talent, it's come up to talent now. They've gone through the draft the last couple of years. They've got some really good players. Marshall, obviously. Gresham starting to come, into that B-grade talent. Billings had a breakout year this year. Dunstan was really good for the last half of this year. So I think it's time to get those experienced heads in. That's why I think Marston's a really good idea. That's why I think Hill's a really good option as well, Ryder as well. And it really helps, lift the expectations a little bit. I think we're sort of too complacent as a club to sort of be like, oh, okay, we'll just, we'll go through this method again and this method again. But it's time to really take the next step and, stop finishing 10th and 11th, start finishing 6th, 7th, and higher and top 4 and really make a charge. Should we cut Nathan Brown? No. If we had got Alex Keith, I think yes, but I still think he adds a little bit. One-on-one, he's still a solid defender. Sometimes I question the way he works out how he's going to play his opponent by playing behind. I think in the last game against Sydney, he was playing about 5-6 metres off Buddy Franklin. He's not a good contested mark, so you've got to get close in on him and really take him out of put him in the contest, but take him out of the open space. Logan Austin played this year, or as in next year. I think he will be a looking. I think he had a bit of an injury problem with his shoulder. I think he had a shoulder reconstruction. So get him a full pre-season and hopefully he can, put his name out for Brett Ratton. Would you take Constable for Stubb right away? Yes. Yes, I would. Only because I'm still hearing, that third round pick for Steve, and I don't think that's enough. Whereas Constable he's a young player, he's showed what he can do, and you can see the potential as well. So I think I would take that straight away. Kingsworth pick 6. Ooh. Interesting. Yeah, interesting call. I think it's sort of hard to tell the value of guys that are only in the league 1 or 2 years because they're only in the league for 1 or 2 years. Whereas, you look at Hill, you can say, okay, well, he's a top 10 pick, if not a top 10, top 15. So interesting call to see people would trade 6 for King. Maybe. I'd try and split it up and, give him a later pick, but, could happen. What about Richmond picking up Zach Jones? I don't think they're as interested as what people say they are. I think that's just sort of a fallback option for Jones if our deal falls through, but I can't see it happening. They were interested in him last year as well, and it didn't work out, so I dare say the Saints will chase him hard. And that'll probably be one of the quicker deals to get done. Yes, agreed there, Phil. Love Stu, but if we get pick 55 for him, that's disgusting, 100%. I'm just reading the comments, sorry. If we choose King Hill, King goes hard and got forgot. You can just... So, yeah, just looking through all the comments, obviously Ben King, everyone loves and wants. He will get to St Kilda eventually. Whether it's this year or next year, don't know. But expect him to be in those red, white and black singlets very soon. He'll get done. I think that would be one of the easiest ones to get done. I'd say pick 6 at the moment, unless they can sort of split him up. So I'm just reading a comment. I would trade Jack Nunes while he has currency. It's not up to us to trade him at the moment. He can explore his free agency rights. So, and we'd probably get a bit more for him if he was a free agent with the compensation side of things. So probably better off for him to leave as a free agent rather than a trade. Paddy Ryder, late pick. Port want him gone, so I dare say that'll be an easy deal done. Same with Sam Gray. Zach Jones could be an easy one, but could be a tough one at the same time. Sydney might play hardball, and their focus will obviously be on Papley and Danaher. Josh Bruce, unfortunately gone. He'll go to the Dogs, hopefully for a first-round pick. If not, it'll be early second. St Kilda might even chase a second and maybe a future pick for Bruce. Just an idea there. Stephen, another one gone. I'm hearing third-round pick. I would take Constable, but obviously Saints are going to be a little bit lenient there in terms of just letting Stephen go back home. Akers, question marks around him. He has a lot of currency on the board. But I think he's highly regarded around St Kilda as well. So that's a watch this space sort of scenario there. I just saw Akers and 6 for Hill and Fremantle second pick to use on Jones. Ed Langdon from Fremantle wants to come to Victoria. Now, he's been touted as going to Melbourne from day one. I wouldn't be too sort of set on him going to Melbourne because I think he's just wanting to go back to Victoria. And obviously, if St Kilda offer a good deal, he's a good midfielder, can use the ball really well, then Akers and 6 maybe for Hill and Langton. Maybe that's not enough sort of currency there on our half, but that's an idea they can float around as well. 55 for Nooms, yeah, 100%. Bulldogs' first pick would be, I think it's roughly around 12 or 13. And that's if they do have it. I haven't looked into the draft stocks in terms of who's got what pick. Just Ed Langdon can't kick. Interesting. Dan Hanbury trade, sorry. I think it's too early to call on Hanbury. He only played a couple of games due to injury, of course. So hopefully next season we can see the full reward of that trade. Brett Ratten doesn't want to get rid of Bruce. Do you think he will leave, or will we put a big enough deal ahead of him to stay? I don't think it's about the money for Bruce. I think it's more about sort of a little bit of a fresh start. He knows Max King's in the ranks as well. And also, Amy Baines is over at the Dogs at the moment. He was a big influencer of getting Bruce from GWS in the first place. So I dare say he's probably doing the same thing over the Dogs and trying to get him over there. So, I mean, if a player wants to go, well, then you can't really hold him to that for a long period of time. I know clubs do, but it doesn't usually work out in the club's favour. So I think it's the right move to get to trade him for the Dogs. Is a first round pick enough? I think it is enough. Will it get the deal done? I don't think the Dogs will be too giving on that. I think they might say, no, we'll give you a second round pick instead. Just reading the comments, sorry. So much chat going on here. It's good. Yeah, Phil, good call. Bruce has to go. I do love the Bruce though. Yep, correct. Would you straight swap Ross for Ben King? It's too hard to tell. Two different players. Words used for Bruce. Leave teams want players like this. But yeah, it's an interesting call. It'll work out. It'll work itself out over the next couple of weeks. Pretty sure the trade period goes for about 2 weeks. Free agency kicks off tomorrow. Expect maybe Jack Nunes to be names to sort of go around quickly, and maybe a deal is done there almost instantly with Fremantle and Sydney chasing him. But on my behalf, that is me done. Thanks for the chat. I really enjoyed chatting with you guys tonight. Hopefully we can get ourselves right, get into a good preseason, and really hit the ground running at the start of 2020 and make the next decade a really strong decade for St Kilda. So stay tuned. I'm sure we'll post a lot of stuff in terms of trades influencing the Saints. But yeah, so thanks for your input. Really appreciate it, and have a good night.